Hi everybody, I'm Neil Maycock.
And I'm Greg DeBresek, and this is the Business of Media Tech in the Wild here at NAB Show 2026. And with us, we've got one of the men of the hour actually, Eric from NAB.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us. We thought it would be great to get you on the podcast, seeing as we're kicking off here at NAB. So, do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Well, sure. First of all, thank you both for having me on what I think is the inaugural edition of this podcast. Yep. So appreciate the opportunity for all of that. So I lead the sales team for the entire show with sponsorship, advertising, exhibit space. I've recently moved into a new role where I'm heading up strategic partnerships and alliances. So, the goal with that is to, the show is in a stage where we need to sort of figure out what these adjacent markets are and how to grow those adjacent markets. And so, it's all about storytelling. You'll see throughout the show that, we're really driving home that whatever platform you're on, you can come to the NAB show and it's all about storytelling. And so, we need to be able to figure out different ways to attract all kinds of storytellers, whether those are creators, whether those are brands, whether those are streamers, whether those are sports outlets. It's a larger pie. And we need to be able to place some attention on that. So we've hired some additional help to help us with the day-to-day operation of the show. And so I'm happy to have some additional resources. And I'm going to place now more of my emphasis on building the show in these other marketplaces. My background, as Neil knows, is I spent, before joining NAB about 8 years ago, I spent 25 years in business-to-business media. So I was the group publisher of a variety of publications, many of which don't exist any longer, unfortunately, but some are still around. And so I kind of grew up in this industry. I love this space, and trying to figure out ways to enhance it and grow it with the changing times, because they are indeed changing.
Well, that's a good point, because you said storytelling multiple times there, whereas it's not that long ago when everything would have been about technology coming into NAB. We were be hyper excited about 3D. That's my favourite one, because that's just like a disaster.
That was like a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but every booth was 3D this, stereoscopic that, and but the conversation was so technology-led, and part of the reason we want to do this podcast is the world is changing now, and the technology, of course, is important, but it's secondary to actually what it's enabling, which is far more about the conversation. And it's interesting to hear you talking as NAB about the storytelling is the focus rather than the
technology being the focus.
Yeah, the technology is going to be an enabler, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think storytellers are coming here, whether you're a creator or whether you're a sports outlet or whether you're in high-end cinema. You still need to figure out what sort of tools you need. You need to understand your business models, and then you need to figure out, how am I going to distribute this content? And the other thing that I think we sometimes lose sight is this whole bringing the industry together and the intersection of all of this, right? So what we're seeing happening a lot right now is, you can have a creator, you could have a sports team, and then you could have a streaming platform. Let's just use Netflix as an example. So, Netflix is now they're doing live sports.
Yeah.
They're trying to introduce creators. They're trying to bring new voices into this conversation, right? So the interesting thing about creators is they're coming with an audience. They're coming with a different perspective. And, I think the legacy media is sort of looking at that, like, how can we participate in that? And the way that they can participate in that is really simple. They're bringing the scale, right? And they're bringing the know-how. And so the combination of the perspective and the audience, that reach and scale and know-how, these two shouldn't compete. They should collaborate, right?
Yeah.
And so what better platform to be able to do that than here? Because we're bringing that large-scale media. We're now bringing creators. We have twice as many creators registered for the show this year than we had last year. We have a whole area dedicated to creators called Creator Lab. That space yesterday was packed. You couldn't even walk in that space. There was so much going on in that space.
Where's that in the show?
So it's backed by, we're Sony and B&HR.
Oh, right, okay.
So last year it was over in the South Hall, which we're no longer utilizing.
Yeah.
And so this year we've placed it where it aptly fits, right? It's in the hall where all the cameras are, all the camera support materials are.
Yeah.
And I think that was the right move, and that's definitely attracted the audience. And so, and I met with a lot of the camera manufacturers yesterday, and they saw, the buzz that was happening back there. So it's exciting. But what's interesting is now they're looking at this as a larger platform for their diversified business. Like historically, these kinds of companies might not bring their entire portfolio of cameras.
Yeah.
And now that they're seeing creators come, well, creators are sometimes using different tools until they scale their businesses, right? So as they scale their business, they want to be the partner with them all throughout that journey, right? So small camera, mid-sized camera, large camera, because they're all going to grow into something someday. And so it's important for, all of the camera manufacturers to be a part of that with them and to build their brand and to make sure that, hey, we're using this all through our journey.
Yeah.
So it's all a lot of fun to watch, particularly when we've been at this for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I think this year we're sort of, this could be a turning point for us where I feel like the marketplace is now noticing. I mean, it doesn't go unnoticed that everybody is talking about the creator economy, right? So it's really just, how do you figure it out? And we think we've got permission to win there. We really think that there's not all of these audiences in one place. There's a lot of little events that happen that are for social influencers.
Yeah.
But they're not like this, right? They don't bring all of these different audiences in, which is really where I think the value lies for everybody.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the big things that I'm seeing is that the big vendors are having to learn how to work with these creators as well. Mm-hmm. It's not just the creators coming to the big vendors, it's the big vendors having to understand how this world is going to work for them.
Yeah. Well, I think I think it's a partnership where they're figuring out like, oh, this is how these folks are using my equipment.
Yeah.
And they're learning a lot from that, right? They're thinking, oh, we never thought about doing a shot like that with all of this motion. Mm-hmm. And then, vertical production is a big topic. We have a few sessions on vertical production. And, you never really thought about having to produce, having to think about vertical production. But the way everybody is shooting now, you need to be able to teach how to do vertical production on these other cameras. It's not just on our iPhones, right? So that's a whole new thing that creators need to learn.
And so that's interesting. So there's two things there. Sort of, I'm curious about how you've reached that audience, the creator audience. How has NAB engaged with them and got them here at the show? And then the education piece is another important part of NAB and the conference and everything. And are you seeing engagement from these creators with the conference as well as the exhibits? Yeah,
so the show this year has 900 speakers on 11 stages.
Wow.
And it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. Yeah. And again, we are trying to serve a very big tent, right? So the idea here is we have a lot of different audiences, a lot of different personas from, engineering to management to business to creators. And so we have to be able to create content tracks to appeal to all of them. This year we also created an enterprise track to try to appeal to the enterprise audience. So enterprise is a bit easier to get to because you know who all the Fortune 500 companies are.
Yep.
You can sort of just target them, and then you flood them with, hey, here's all this content. Content leads discovery, and then they come. To your point, creators are a little bit harder to find.
Right.
And you have to, we've all heard this before, you have to meet people where they are. So we've done, a lot of promotion in outlets that they're engaging in. And we've done some partnerships with some other creators to say, hey, we're coming to NAB, we're excited about going to NAB. And, they've been promoting us. And I think it works, but it's also not an accident that we've had some very successful creators at the show the past few years. So last year we had Darman here, and prior year we had Mr. Beast's team. We didn't have Mr. Beast himself, but we had his team. So we're able to sort of use that. We have all of that footage, and we're able to sort of cut that up and then promote it and say, hey, if these are the people you're aspiring to be like, and they're at this show, you might want to come.
That's social proof.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thinking here is really, they're not all going to be Mr. Beast or Darman overnight, but they all started with a small following, and now they all run like media companies. And so everybody sort of wants to be a media company, and what better place to learn how to be a media company than at the NAB show?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And then sort of going back to, let's say, the more traditional NAB exhibitors that, well, our background.
Yes.
I'm trying to avoid the word old, but
Or legacy.
legacy.
but
Traditional media.
traditional media. How's the engagement from those companies sort of evolving with NAB? Because it's post-pandemic, we saw quite a cutback on the big booths, but the big booths seem to be back at scale. You look at some of the companies out there, massive again. So people are still investing on the show floor. But are you seeing other dynamics in?
Yeah, a few things have happened. The type of company, the type of product that these companies have are quite a bit different. So, the move from all of this infrastructure hardware has sort of changed the way that companies need to display their products and services. So the move to SaaS and the move to cloud and virtualization has all sort of become focused on, well, I need to create a different experience in my booth for my customers. And so that meant, rethinking how their booth presence was going to be, and it became a little bit more about connectivity. Let me demonstrate this sort of workflow in the cloud, and how does that work? And then it becomes a little bit about hospitality and about the quality of those meetings. And so I think, it's important to us to meet with our customers, sort of understand these exhibitors and understand, who are they trying to meet, what are they trying to accomplish when they're here, and how can we help them do that? And I think, in addition to the booth, it's what else can you do outside of your booth?
Exactly.
That is sort of helping you tell that story, because it is remarkable how, even the largest brands, they don't always, not everybody goes to every single company. It's just impossible. No. Our research shows that the average person stays at the show for 2.5 days, and there's roughly 1,100 exhibitors here. It's just impossible.
You can't fit 500 a day.
It's just impossible to get to everybody, and so you sort of have to prioritize all of that. And so you want to be able to tell your story throughout the show floor. There's a fair amount of companies here now that you'll see them in multiple halls trying to tell their story throughout the hall. You'll see they'll have their customers telling their story on their behalf in some of our 11 theaters. So it's become a little bit different. I think they're definitely looking at how they can engage their customers differently than we used to do, let's say, even as early as 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years ago, it was just, well, we'll pop up our booth and we'll do some marketing in advance.
It was all about the booth.
And we'll hope for the best. And the truth is, your customers are sort of all over the place, and they're trying to figure out different ways to navigate as well. And so it's important to us to listen, understand those concerns, and see how we can map them better. The other thing that you didn't ask about, but I think it's important to cover here, is the type of people, the type of titles that we're seeing come to the show have also changed.
Yeah.
For example, it used to be, a VP of technology, chief engineer, all of those things. Now we're seeing things like, IT architect, we're seeing AI, we're seeing a whole slew of new titles. And again, we want to be able to share that with our partners and say, hey, here's a new list of titles that we're seeing come to the show. 41% of the people who are registered for the show this year have never been to the show.
Wow.
That's an incredible stat.
It's just unbelievable. And so, I think you have your base, and then you have this entire different audience that is coming. Also, the number of companies this year, we're about 4,000 more companies here. Now, not just exhibitors. I mean, companies, visitors, companies that would be in attendance. There's 4,000 more than there was last year. Now, they might not all be sending 8 or 10 people. Like, let's say, a Sinclair might send 20 or 30 people, or this year Netflix is sending a lot of people. You'll see that, but there's the quantity of companies that are coming is really skyrocketed. So we're pleased with that.
Because they're great stats. Because I think that there tends to be this sort of fixation on how many registrations have you had, and this
overall numbers,
this sort of gross number. But behind that, it's like who's coming and like the quality of the people are coming, and it's expensive to get here. So maybe the more junior people aren't coming to the show, but the people that are coming are significant. But that 40% is an incredible stat.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's part of what's happening in just the broader media and entertainment environment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to take credit for all of it, but I just don't think that's the case.
It's totally down to the rebrand, right?
Absolutely.
It's the rebrand killed it.
I just don't think that's it. I think, people are looking for solutions.
Yes.
And nothing really does replace an in-person event to be able to do things quickly and efficiently. To your point, point, yes, it's expensive to get here. Yes, the town is maybe not as cheap as it once was, but where else can you spend 3 days, really, and meet all of the leaders in the industry, meet all of the technology partners in the industry, find business opportunities? I mean, you'd have to get on a plane and it would take you 4 months to do that.
For me, that was the learning of the pandemic, because I was at the time with a company and we spent a lot on the booth at the show, and I was constantly questioning how much of my marketing budget was going on this stuff. And then during the pandemic, when the shows didn't happen, it was just like, it was impossible to replicate the level of engagement you get at these events. And it was it really transformed my thinking around the importance of the shows. Now, I still believe in what you were talking about, de-emphasize it's not just about the booth. There's all this other engagement that you can do around the show. And I think people need to be aware of that, and it doesn't matter what scale you are. We're here as sort of one-man companies, and we're getting a lot of benefit from all that ancillary engagement, and we don't have booths, but we're actively participating in NAB, which is great.
Yeah, it's hard to replace the feedback mechanism, I think, that our exhibitors get. I mean, for sure, this is a center point of their year. It can make or break, somebody's sales cycle. But the fact is that it also gives you a great opportunity to get customer feedback, right? You launch a product into the marketplace, you get a lot of people experimenting with that, giving you feedback. We like this, we don't like that. That's really tough to do on Zoom, right? And also, prospecting. How much prospecting can you do? And I mean, it's much easier to meet a potential customer in your booth. You take them through the 20-minute demonstration, and then your team can then follow up. But finding that person to start on the other end of a phone is virtually impossible, right? If they come into your booth from all the work that you did, and now you have a real pre-qualified handshake, it's worth the gold.
Yeah, it is. It's worth the investment.
It's worth the investment.
We keep talking about the cost of NAB, the cost of Vegas, but reality is, what's the cost of the alternative?
Right. Yeah. No sales. Well, when the value is clear, the decision should be really easy, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's important for us to make sure that as show organizers, we continue to work really hard to deliver value for all of our stakeholders, right? We want to be sure that we're doing everything we can to, make sure we're driving the right audiences for our exhibitors. Having a really good experience for attendees. So, I mean, having this new building complete, I think, is a game changer. Not anything we had any control over, but as an organizer, you still have to manage your way through the disruption.
Yes.
And so having this sort of just changes the way you find your way around the show. It's more enjoyable for you. We've tried to create
my step
more
count is down this year.
I bet it
from
is.
last year. Last year was a killer.
Well, it's not having South Hall and having these 3 halls really close together makes a difference. It also means you can visit more booths and you can have more experiences. We created this year a networking lounge that's in the Central Hall lobby, and it has a bar, so you could get coffee in the morning and you could get alcohol in the afternoon, and it's in a central location. And so the idea is there to bring these different groups together, have a place that we're sort of curating. Exhibitors do their own things, but it's like, hey, we're sort of curating this together.
That's really helpful, because again, that was a learning experience for me, going from being a vendor, always having a booth and having a home at the show, just having somewhere you want to meet somebody if you're visiting and not exhibiting, to have that hospitality, that's a great facility, I think, because you could, in the sort of food courts and stuff, is not a good place to meet.
Right.
So that's a really good improvement.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the big issues around NAB, around most of the trade shows, was where else could you go other than a stand, than the coffee area on a stand, to be able to have a meeting that was not one of those dedicated meeting rooms. Just something informal that you could actually go and have that conversation, maybe just away from the hustle and bustle of the stand, and so I think it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, we added another area to appeal to our C-suite
Oh, yeah, I
titles.
saw that, yeah.
So it's right around the corner from here, actually. It's called the Executive Lounge. And so, the C-suite generally don't spend a lot of time hoofing it around on the show floor, right? So they're spending a lot of time doing meetings over at the Wynn and the Encore, and occasionally they'll come over here for a meeting, and they just, they sort of run right back out as soon as they get here. So we're like, what can we do to encourage them to stay and perhaps even take more meetings? Like, to be fair, they don't need to walk the floor, but our exhibitors are here. Our exhibitors want to meet with them. So what can we do to help enable that a little bit better? So we created a Centurion Lounge type of atmosphere up here. Comfortable seating, a big wall of news, sort of like you would see in an airport lounge. All the food and drink that you could have all day long, breakfast, lunch, and cocktail reception every night, and place to charge your phone. And there's 4 private meeting rooms in there.
Okay.
And we've made that available at registration for people who have certain C-suite titles, and they can come in and use that space. We also sold a couple meeting rooms in there. So it made it really simple. So we promoted it this way. And hey, you come over, you have a meeting, have the meeting there. And it just feels different. To your point, it's off the show floor. You're not sitting at Lucky's.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
Where who knows is overhearing you're
Exactly.
having some sort of confidential conversation. Who knows who's overhearing something, and they can't sit at. To be fair, you can't have them sitting in Lucky's, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to think about the variety of different types of people that come to the show, and how we can help make that experience better for them. One of the things that we started a few years ago was, you might remember, we changed the date pattern on the show a few years ago. And that was in full response to trying to attract an audience that we were concerned about, frankly. So this was all pre-fires and pre-strike and all of this, but the Hollywood cinema community, pre all of those really awful events, had started to share with us, it's really difficult for us to come to the show because we're working generally during the week. These are all working professionals. They're in Hollywood and California. The largest state that we get attendance from naturally is California. Yep. And so, what can we do to ensure that we're getting this community back into the building? And so we took that bold step to change the date pattern so that we would start on Sunday, on a weekend day, and then end on Wednesday. And it takes you about 3 years to see if this sort of works, because you really have to have that pattern down. And the idea was just that. The idea was, hey, then maybe they'll now come in on a Saturday. They'll spend a Saturday night, Sunday, maybe stay to Monday, but they can come here. And most of the exhibitors they want to see are in Central and North, right? So they're all the production type of companies, and so it's enough for them to be very focused and see those handful of companies. So we've seen sort of the traffic pattern, be a little bit different on Sunday. We don't have that big crush that we used to have on Monday morning, where you'd have that pooling of people, but it's been a much more stepped sort of opening. So you probably saw yesterday, it opened. There wasn't a lot of fanfare, but the show floor was really very busy. I think it depended on where you went to see the traffic. For example, it felt like to us anyway that West was a little bit quieter than it was, and we sort of expect that because we think that the big media companies, they're sticking with their regular schedule. But the weekend guys are all the production people. So Central and North was busy yesterday, and maybe West was a little bit less busy. I think what you'll start to see today is a little bit of the opposite.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I definitely noticed that Central was busy.
Busy.
And that makes sense with the production side.
And the data sort of supports this, not sort of, just flat out supports this. At the end of the 3 years, what we've seen is we had this other problem too, which you've brought up over a lot of time, is there's always, unfortunately, there has to be a last day of a show. Thank God there's a last day. Although I would do this every day.
I don't know that we could.
But Thursday, for some time, when it was on Thursday, exhibitors started to voice some concerns that Thursday was becoming, really a throwaway day.
Yes.
And it's a vendor day, and that's important, but again, costs and time and all that stuff. So we've now seen that Wednesday is our Wednesday is now better than any Thursday we've ever had.
Oh, really?
So what you're seeing is, it's just it's more consistent, sustained traffic throughout the time. And if you have 40% of the attendees who are coming to the show are newbies, then having a crush of people to navigate on day one makes it sort of difficult for them. So this gives them a little bit of opportunity to get their sea legs, sort of find their way around the show a little bit better. It also helps our exhibitors who, sometimes on a Monday slam, they don't get to see everybody because they're knee deep at the booth and they don't get this sort of spreads out that traffic a little bit better for everybody. So the feedback, don't get me wrong, it was a little painful in the beginning to convince people why we were doing this.
Yes.
And like anything else, change is sometimes hard. But I think at this point now, everybody sort of understands.
So overall, you think it's been a success? Or?
Yeah, like I said, it was bumpy trying to explain to everybody why we're doing this. But I think now everybody sort of gotten used to this. I think there's value for the weekend. I think our next challenge, our next set of, our ambition now is to firm up Wednesday. We've done a couple of things on Wednesday. For example, this enterprise track that I was talking about, we've put that enterprise track on Wednesday. Okay. So maybe we can start to attract a different audience on Tuesday and Wednesday. House of Worship, enterprise brands, they can all come in at a different time. Yep. And then you look at some of our larger exhibitors, they start to maybe slow down, and now they have time to talk to those people who maybe they wouldn't have had time to talk to before. So we're really pleased with it, and I think as these extended verticals, as we continue to grow those extended verticals, we have to find out the right programming that's going to hold people. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to change habits, but being able to get people to stay through Wednesday, I think, will help a lot.
Yeah, but conceptually, I think that's a really intelligent strategy. Yeah. I think the idea of making the whole 4 days sustainable, rather than that sort of incredible fall off a cliff on the second day. From a day one, which was actually, to be honest, kind of ugly. It used to be on a Monday.
Yeah, it was painful.
Yeah,
it was just painful. Yeah. So nobody wants to. I think it improved the overall attendee experience for everybody. And this year, we'll go back and look at everything and just see. Okay. But it's now with the building done, we ought to be able to measure this satisfaction levels.
Yes.
I think our satisfaction levels, unfortunately, were skewed because of just the terrible experience people had with the building.
Oh yeah. Yes. The construction, particularly last year, was tough and so spread out. Yeah.
So, with all of that, where to for NAB from now? In 3 years' time, what do we see at NAB? What do we see different? What do we see you doubling down on? Mm-hmm. What's the experience like?
Yeah, so I think the experience is going to continue to evolve. I think the experiences you'll see now is evolving to more of this sort of experience, hands-on type of approach. We've got at least 4 different areas that are very experiential. So you have Creator Lab, which we've talked about. Yes. We have City Central, which is a hands-on area for DPs and cameramen, where you have jibs and dollies, and you have crews coming in on how to do production. Again, all hands-on. Yep. Large area, so that's quite good. And we have a builder's lab that's in the West Hall, where people are coming in and they're learning how to build a fast channel in real time on a laptop, right? So I think what you're going to start to see is more of this application into whatever these other industries are. For example, I mentioned enterprise. Yes. So I think we have an ambition to start talking about how can we bring more brands into the tent, and what is it that those brands want to see. And I think you'll see us doing something experiential for brands, for example. The next piece is, there's no telling where this sports piece is going to take us. Yes. So we've started with sports in a theater. This is year 2 of the Sports Summit. But as I mentioned, there's so much happening in sports, whether it's fan engagement because of the increase, wagering has changed fan engagement. Then you have all this rights management. So we're finding teams and leagues that are coming that didn't come before. We're also finding stadiums are coming. We never had stadiums before. So now there's that angle around sports, is all of those stadium people are coming. So I think we have to work on, what does that community need from us? How can we help that community? So I mean, this town we can do anything. We can do so many things in this town.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of time and understanding our markets and seeing the kind of experience that they want to have. I will say that generationally, the show is shifting to a much younger audience, right? We're probably around 45% Zs and millennials. Which is
wow,
which is
bad news for us.
So I think we're all Xers and Boomers. But the Xers and Boomers are about 20%. Xers are about 30%. So don't do the math on there. But we're definitely doing about half is coming from Zs and millennials. So it used to be much higher Xers and Booms. So we have about half coming from the bottom, which they want to experience a show in a much different way, right? They want to do hands-on things, they want to do networking things, they want hospitality, and they don't necessarily need to have a big demo, right? So we call this the next gen event goer. And so the way a next gen event goer is going to have an experience, we have to be really in touch with the next gen event goer and make sure that we're building an experience for them. And that's great. So we're just we spend a lot of time thinking about them, talking to them. What do these creators want to see? Right? How do they want to experience the show? So there's a lot happening here that is away from what the traditional show used to look like. Cool. And I think we have a lot of permission to play in all those spaces and be sort of the intersection of all of it.
Yeah. And when the National Association of Broadcasters tends to start becoming not such about broadcast anymore, but about the video that happens everywhere else in our world.
Well, I would just say we would redefine what it means to be a broadcaster.
Yes.
And so everybody wants to be a broadcaster now. They either want to be a broadcaster or a storyteller. Yeah. And broadcasting really is just about amplifying the message, not that it's going over the air. Right?
Well, you get really random people starting podcasts. So there we go. So,
and exactly, you fall exactly into that mix. That's a very good
I like that concept that we really need to redefine what a broadcaster is, because you can choose not to call it broadcasting, or you can choose to actually say, well, this is what broadcasting is today.
Right. And I think the community has got caught up in two pieces. One is broadcasting is over-the-air legacy media, and then broadcasting is high-end production equipment. Well, the high-end production equipment is still high-end, it's just not it's more democratized, and almost anybody, including you guys, can afford to have a setup that is good quality video that you can put on the air anywhere, anytime. And that has been the game changer. So it used to be that broadcasting was meant to just be a handful of institutions controlling what everybody sees. And I think we're seeing the world is a different place, and everybody can be a broadcaster, really.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to close things. We've taken a lot of your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas. It's been great. Good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to watch.
And good luck with NAB.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some great insights. Really appreciate it.
Good. Yeah,
Thank
I'm glad.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.